If I hadn't done that, maybe my husband Bean would still be with me. My name is Ali, and 10 years ago I met the love of my life. Bean was the ideal man for me, kind, compassionate, and driven. He was that rare man who understood from an early age what he wanted out of life and worked to achieve it. We met when I was only 20 years old, and a year later we were married. My parents were against it at first. They thought I was too young to be in a serious relationship, but when they saw me shining with him, their doubts disappeared. His parents didn't accept me right away. They thought that Bean was too young for marriage and that I was not the right woman to be his partner. But in time, they accepted me into their family. I was proud of myself. I knew I was the perfect wife for Bean. Our house was always neat and clean, and I tried to make his life as pleasant as possible. I knew how to cook, and my meals always made him smile. I was always ready to support him, both in business and in bed. I loved his body, his smell, his touch. He was everything to me and I did everything I could to make him feel happy. But, as is often the case, there was a problem in our relationship that I couldn't fully realize for a long time. Michael. That name started to pop into my head more and more often. He was a coworker of ours, the head of administrative staff at the hotel where I worked. He was only a few years older than me, and, in fact, the only thing we had in common was professional matters. Michael was the one man I felt no attraction to. Not at all. To me, he was just part of the workday, a regular employee. But something began to change, and unfortunately, I realized it too late. Michael had fallen on hard times. His wife had cheated on him, taken their daughter and walked out of his life, leaving him in a state of utter devastation. He was a good man, kind and compassionate, but at the same time he was in a deep depression. His pain was visible to everyone in our team and we, along with Ani, another staff member, took on the role of his support group. We had lunches together, went for walks with him after work, talked about life, trying to give him back some of his confidence. Michael was so desperate that he began to doubt his manhood. He often said that after what had happened, no woman would ever want him again. It was painful to hear, because each of us saw him as a good man who was just unlucky. When the idea came to me, I really believed it could be something important. I thought that by helping Michael regain his confidence and manhood, I would not only give him a chance to recover, but I would also learn something new about men and relationships. My intention seemed pure. After all, I wanted to help a man in trouble, to give him back the meaning of life. In my heart, I even hoped that by exploring my feelings for another man, I would be able to better understand my relationship with Bean, to bring back the novelty and passion that was fading. That night at dinner, when I decided to tell Bean my thoughts, I expected him to at least listen to me. I sat across from him, we ate, and I began to talk. I explained everything to him, how Michael had lost his confidence after his wife cheated on him, how hard it was for him, how I saw this as an opportunity to help him and, at the same time, to deepen my understanding of relationships. I talked about psychology, about what I had read in books. It seemed that my arguments were convincing. I truly believed in what I was saying. But Bean just looked at me with a puzzled expression. When I finished, he burst into laughter, a hearty, loud laugh. He couldn't stop, just laughed in my face. At that moment, I felt embarrassed. He didn't seem to understand me at all. I expected dialogue, reflection, perhaps even a touch of jealousy. But instead it was just laughter. His reaction hurt me. I felt humiliated, as if he was laughing not only at my idea, but at me, at my feelings and thoughts. I tried to explain to him the seriousness of my intentions, but he only wrinkled his nose, and then suddenly his face changed dramatically. His laughter stopped abruptly, and anger flashed in his eyes. He jumped up from his chair and started yelling that I was crazy, that all this psychological stuff was just an excuse to be with another man. His face was bloodshot, and he seemed completely uncomprehending. He didn't want to hear my explanations. He didn't want to believe that I was just trying to help, that my desire to learn more about men didn't mean I'd fallen out of love with him. I waited for him on the bed, completely unclothed. I knew that when he came we would make love and I would give him everything he dreamed of. And so it happened. I showed him with all my actions how much he was dear to me and we went to bed cuddled in complete love. I really loved my husband. A few days later, I tried again to voice my proposal to Bean, hoping that he would calmly listen to me and understand. But this time he grabbed his phone, texted someone and left the house. I didn't understand his psychotic reaction and noticed that lately he didn't let the phone out of his hands at all, and several times I saw him stop in front of the house and didn't come in until he finished talking. But these thoughts I had in my head, I was sure it was complete nonsense. A few days passed and it was his long-awaited weekend. He was going to go on a little trip with his friends. I guess I was stupid to try and ask him for Michael's help one more time. "Do whatever you want, I'm really sick of it. You're telling me to my face that you want to be with another man for a while. I've had enough." He replied and left. Of course I tried to support him with love messages. I even wrote a few times that I already missed him while he was away. The next day at work, I voiced my proposal to Michael. He was shocked at first and repeated many times that he didn't want to come between me and my husband, but promised to think about it. He accepted my proposal on Tuesday over lunch. He was tormented by doubts but warned me straight away that there would be no attraction or falling in love, just physical contact and support. That's what happened. There was no kissing, no tenderness, nothing but contact with protection. Michael thanked me so much. I felt like the luckiest person ever. I was proud of myself for helping him out of that depression. But I didn't know it would turn out so badly for me. That night I called my husband and left a voicemail. I told him that everything went great and he could be proud of me. It was just one appointment and he didn't need to worry. I knew he was supposed to be back on Sunday, but he wasn't there yet. Monday, Michael at work was just great. You could no longer feel the heaviness in his chest. He was full of energy, but when I got home I saw the divorce papers on the table. How could he do that to me? What was that even? He wrote all the doors and mirrors with bad words for me with my own lipstick. He wrote in a note that I was now toilet paper for all other men to wipe themselves with. I knew he wouldn't have done it himself. He must have had help, but who? I couldn't reach him or his parents, who were probably happy and knew the whole truth. I sat in the car, staring silently into the void. My thoughts were like a storm swirling in my head, and I couldn't believe that my life was falling apart so quickly. Tears were streaming down my cheeks, but I could no longer feel any shame or grief. It was like it all merged into one powerful stream. I tried to understand what had gone wrong, what I had done to deserve this fate. The letter from the lawyer was like a judgment. It included his number, and I gathered my strength and called him. I outlined the whole situation, hoping that he could offer some solution, some way out of this hell. But the lawyer was impartial and clear. "Solve all questions through me," he repeated. I felt like I was trapped in a trap that I had driven myself into. The next day, I went to Bean's parents, hoping they could help me, or at least listen to me. I was willing to do anything to talk to him, to explain that it was all a misunderstanding, that I had no malicious intent. But their encounter with my despair was cold and cruel. Not only did they not let me into the house, but they looked at me with such contempt that I felt as if I had gone back to my childhood and into hell. When Ben's father did call me, I saw the same anger in his eyes as the others. He wiped away my tears, but his words were like an icy shower. "Ben is very angry now, and he doesn't want to see you anymore. Go away, don't make your mother sin." Those words were like a knife in my heart. I felt so betrayed and isolated that I didn't even know how to cope. After that, I spent 2 hours in the car just not knowing what to do. I couldn't drive, I couldn't do anything, and all those hours just increased my despair. I was sure it was all a dream, a horrible dream that I couldn't wake up from. I took a few days off from work and devoted all my time to looking for Bean. I wanted to talk to him, to explain that everything that happened was a mistake, and to try to take it all back. But the guards at his house wouldn't let me in, and my screaming and crying only made things worse. I knew he had alerted everyone who could help me, and it was unbearable. Every day I called Bean from different numbers, hoping that at least one of my attempts would get his attention. I even asked Michael to help me, and he left a nice message apologizing and thanking me for saving him. It was my only support, but even that couldn't replace my husband. Family was the other side of this conflict. Everyone I considered close and supportive turned their backs on me. My mother, father and brothers were on Bean's side, accusing me of treason and betrayal. They didn't want to support me in court and called my actions real treason, not help. I was shocked at how things had turned around. Instead of support, I received only condemnation and criticism. I felt like I was trapped, surrounded by enemies, and didn't understand how to get out of it. My life, which I thought was stable and predictable, fell apart. Every morning I woke up with the hope that it would all be over and I could see Bean again, but every day that hope melted away. Now the only thing I had left was endless guilt and regret. I was willing to do anything to make things right, but I realized it was probably too late. The day had come when I could see Bean in court. My hands shook as I tried to approach him, but the guards wouldn't let me through. I shouted his name, begged to speak to him, but all my efforts were in vain. There was an oppressive silence, and I felt my heart clench with grief and helplessness. Every moment of the trial was torture for me, and I did not know how much longer I could endure the agonizing wait. When the trial began, I noticed that the judge immediately showed his attitude. He started talking about how women who cheat in marriage don't deserve his support. His words were barbed and I felt a chill creep into every part of my body. The lawyer tried to explain that my helping Michael was purely goodwill and had nothing to do with cheating. We tried to convey to everyone that it was just a desire to support someone in a difficult situation. But when I couldn't take it anymore, I exclaimed that Bean had given me the right to help Michael and now he was trying to judge me for it. I felt like I was trapped. My words seemed to find no understanding, and I heard only accusations and insults in response. The judge, for his part, reacted angrily. He stated that Bean had not given me the right to sleep with another man and that divorce was inevitable. I couldn't believe this was all happening to me. I knew I was being judged, but I had no idea that everyone was so harshly against me. After the trial, I had to face reality. I had to move out of our house as I couldn't afford to pay for it. That house was a symbol of everything I had lost, and now I felt betrayed and isolated. Every step in that direction was like a blow to my heart. I felt like I was losing everything that was dear and important. During this time, Michael continued to support me, but I was wary. Even though he was a really good man and was trying to help me, I was afraid that if Bean suddenly changed his mind and wanted to come back, he might be hurt that I would be with another man. I couldn't afford to let that happen. My feelings were confused and I didn't know how to handle the situation. A week passed and I tried contacting Bean again. I emailed him, gave him my new address, and wrote as many sweet and kind words as I could. I tried to convey to him how much I cared about him and how hard it was for me without him. I wrote that I was willing to wait for him as long as I could and that I would be faithful to him forever. The hope that he would change his mind and come back was the last spark I tried to keep in my heart. Every day I felt more and more alone and devastated. My new address was in a small rented accommodation, far from the former luxury and cozy home. Every night I sat alone, listening to the silence that seemed droning and frightening. I tried to find comfort in my thoughts about Bean and in the hope that he might understand and forgive. A year and a half later, I was on the verge of breaking down again when I saw Bean on the street. He was with a woman I had never seen before. She was truly beautiful, with exquisite facial features and a fiery posture. But what struck me most was that she was pregnant. I stood frozen with shock and watched them as they held hands and smiled at each other. It was so unreal and painful. I remembered all the moments we spent, our embrace together, our moments of happiness and passion. Every memory I hold as a source of strength was now like a knife in my heart. I sent Bean many messages, asking him to come back, talking about my love and how I was not healthy with anyone else. It all seemed vain and fruitless, and now this scene stood before me. When I noticed them, I couldn't stand by any longer. With each step as I approached him, my emotions boiled like a volcano. I ran up, despite my calm breathing, and on a desperate impulse I asked about the conversation. I had to do it. I had to plead guilty to explaining how much I loved him, how hard it was for me to live without him. But his reaction was unpredictable and very cold. He looked at me with such indifference that it was like a punch in the face. "Who are you, girl?" His words were like an icy shower. He hugged his new woman who looked a little puzzled but still supported him. Soon they turned around and walked away, leaving me standing on the sidewalk, full of grief and confusion. I was devastated. I couldn't understand how it was that he was able to forget about us so quickly and build a new life. Different feelings fought inside me, from anger to deep sadness. I still continued to feel that Bean was all I had. I couldn't let this new woman take him away from me. I was waiting for him to come back. I felt like I could do anything I could to get him back. I kept hoping that maybe he would realize he had made a mistake and find a way to come back to me. I couldn't just let him go. It was as if I continued to be connected to him by invisible threads despite everything that had happened. Every day I tried to communicate with people who might know something about his whereabouts, and I searched for a way to learn more about his new life. I kept sending him letters, messages, asking him to come back, promising to fix himself, to be different, to be better. I hoped that one day he would hear me and give me a chance to rebuild our relationship.